Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. I'm Musgrove, and it's time for an episode of Introducing. And this week we're going to introduce to you guys Lloyd Kelly, Newcastle United's first signing of the summer transfer window, arriving on a free transfer, having left Bournemouth. And it's a pleasure to be joined by Sam Davis from the Back of the Net, an AFC Bournemouth podcast. Sam, welcome to the podcast. You keeping well?
Yeah, very good. Enjoying the summer sun down here. Nice summer's day. And things look to be exciting for AFC Bournemouth. Alas, we've lost a star player, but I'm sure we'll be talking about him.
Well, I'm glad you've introduced him like that, a star player, because that would be music to the ears of Newcastle United fans. And I think this arrival of Lloyd Kelly, it's not universally accepted as a good signing. And that's probably because of one reason and one reason only. And that's where I'm going to start before we talk a bit about his character and what have you. It is the injuries of Lloyd Kelly. And he's missed quite a few games for Bournemouth over the last few seasons. I've got the days and games written down here. So we'll start in the first season that he signed from Bristol. He missed 32 games. Then he missed 10 games the season after that. He missed 4 games the season after that, 18 the season after that, and then he's missed 17 in the season just gone. Those numbers don't read too well, Sam. Is it a problem for Lloyd Kelly, and do you think he can overcome the injury issues that he seems to keep on facing?
Yeah, I don't think it's as bad as people paint out. It's not some kind of persistent injury that he's got. They are all different injuries when he has had them. And yeah, I appreciate the fact that there have been a number of seasons where he's not played the full amount of games. And you look, there were also seasons in the Premier League where he was understudied to a certain Mr. Nathan Ake, so he couldn't get in the side. So it wasn't just injuries if you look at appearance stats alone, but alas, yeah, this season it's been a muscle injury that has kept him out for a number of matches for us. But I don't think it's anything that Newcastle fans overly need to worry about, to be honest, because they're usually relatively short term. There are times he's been sort of frozen out the side for other reasons as well, so it isn't just down to injuries himself. But yeah, looking at the appearance stats, if you look down the seasons he's been with Bournemouth and you look at the matches he's played, you could look at it with a naked eye and think, actually, this guy's not played much. There have been a few injuries, of course, but I don't think it's anything that Newcastle fans should be overly concerned by.
Well, that is good news. Just before you did, so you've lost a star player. So what makes him, or what made him a star player for Bournemouth?
He was just really composed on the ball. His time at Bournemouth wasn't always brilliant. Like you say, we signed him from Bristol City, as we did a few players at the time. We have had a number of players from them over the seasons, and Lloyd Kelly in particular stood out as being very much in the Eddie Howe mould at the time. Whenever he has a team, within about 2 or 3 years, you just know the type of pedigree and physicality that the players that Eddie's going to sign, and he certainly did for us in Lloyd Kelly. He's a player that was left back, but Eddie's converted him into a left-sided centre back, left back again. He's very versatile in that regard, but it's just his physicality, his strength, his pace. For instance, if you put him in a foot race, you've got no problems there. And he's just really cool and composed on the ball. And what you know, a lot of managers would be putting him as first name on the team sheet, and Scott Parker gave him the captaincy as well at AFC Bournemouth because he was a player that was highly regarded by his fellow players. And I think that captaincy was more not vocal, it was just leading by example, and that's one thing he did fairly well. It wasn't always that brilliant on the pitch. Sometimes his performances maybe came across a little bit pedestrian, but that's because he knew he could get himself out of trouble with his pace, and invariably he did. So yeah, as this season has progressed, I think Bournemouth fans have elevated them in his own head as a star because we know he's going. If he was staying with us, it's one of those you don't know what you got till it's gone scenarios. And I think, Lloyd Kelly will be a big miss for us. And look, even if he's not a star now, he will be in the future. But in our eyes, he has been.
It seems genuine sadness that he's gone. I mean, is it also not just because of the way he plays and the ability that he's got? It's also a little bit of sadness because he's left on a free transfer, and had he been under contract, he probably would have been looking at maybe a 30, 40 million pound sale.
I suppose so. Look, I think the reality of being a club the size that we are, is that there are going to be players that use us as a stepping stone, really, because ultimately players want to play for top 10 clubs. Maybe we can become that regularly. Who knows? That's what our owners want to be. But I can understand it from Lloyd's point of view. You sort of wonder where the ceiling for a club like AFC Bournemouth is, and it's probably not much higher than where we are now. Our owner has got ambitions for European football, etc. But I think players like Lloyd want to go on and play Champions League football, play European football. I know it's not going to be happening for Newcastle this season, but ultimately it will be in seasons to come, I think. And I think I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how we cope without him, really. But I think there is a lot of sadness, because just because when you're onto a good thing, when you've had your best ever season with AFC Bournemouth, with some of the stars that we've had, it would just be nice to keep them together. But the reality is, we're going to be that club where players want to move on, and Lloyd Kelly is one of them that has. Dom Solanke has as well. Thankfully, he committed himself a long time ago. Lloyd didn't, and I think that's because he's been with us for a while. He has played very well during that time with us. He's always put in 100%. Some of his performances haven't always been great. We might come on to that, of course. But no, I sense that he just wanted to move on with his career. So I don't blame him for moving on at the time he did and not wanting to reconsider the contract offers that Cherries provided him with.
Now, it's interesting because you've mentioned that when you look at the stats appearances and how low it is in some seasons, it's not always been because of the injuries he's played, understudy to some players. It just hasn't got in the team. I don't know how much you know of Newcastle's situation at the back, but they have got quite a few options at centre back now. They're missing two through long-term injuries in Jamal Lascelles and Sven Botman. But what do you think Lloyd Kelly maybe has been promised with this move to Newcastle? Do you think he'll be looking at a move to Newcastle as him going there, and he would be first choice, even if the likes of Sven Botman were fit and raring to go?
Really interesting one. I think that there is, I think that Eddie Howe has signed him wanting to play him from the off, and he'll be ready to do that. I would like to think that he'll be first choice. I think a lot of Newcastle United fans sort of turn their nose up at Nathan Ake when they signed him from little old Bournemouth, thinking, who's this guy? And, Newcastle fans, there are probably some that might be thinking fairly similar, like Bournemouth, we're signing their left back. How good is he? Well, look, he's brilliant. And one of my colleagues that does the podcast with me made a statement, which I was thinking about at the time. Like, is that jumping the gun a little bit too much? But he said he thinks that within 12 months, Lloyd Kelly could be playing for England as left back, because unfortunately, when you play for a smaller club, you will get overlooked, as Dom Solanke, 21 goals in all competitions, has found out when Ivan Toney's only scored 4, and he's over in Germany and Dom Solanke's not. So I think he certainly will be competing to start. Whether he does straight away, I'm not so sure. Just depends how ready he'll be, but I'm sure Eddie Howe will make him ready. So I've seen the Newcastle squad, and I think he would fit in very well there. But like I say, there is some versatility there as well. So it's not just left back; he can be a left-sided centre back as well. And it'll just be interesting to see where Eddie Howe favours playing him.
But see, that is the interesting bit, because when we've spoken about him on this podcast, we've spoken about him as a centre back coming in to pair Fabian Schär in the centre of Newcastle's defence, and then talking about the possibility that he could actually rival Lewis Hall, Matt Targett at left back, because that is maybe somewhere where Newcastle United are vulnerable. Yet you, who've seen him play not week in, week out over the last few years, but seen a lot, have primarily put him as a left back. So I guess that is kind of where we're at. There definitely seems to be, at least from people who maybe haven't watched him as much as the Bournemouth fans, a little bit of scratching the head. Is he a left back? Is he a centre back?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so difficult, really, because if you look through his stats, he's probably played the same amount of times in both positions, really. But different managers have favoured him in different positions. I know Andoni Iraola for us has played him in both positions when we've been short, or when we've had certain players being injured. One thing we sort of realised when he was available for selection, that Andoni would shoehorn him into one of those two positions just because of his quality. At left back, he's strong, he's pacey, he's physical, he'll get up the pitch, he'll be doing underlapping, he'll be doing overlapping, he'll play some wicked crosses in, he'll play the ball into the feet of the midfielders or the strikers. He gets up the pitch. He hasn't scored, but he has assisted this season. And at centre back, again, he's a player that's strong, very good in the air, very good at reading the ball, I think. Also can sort of push forward a little bit as well, knowing that he's going to have some cover next to him, but even if he hasn't got any cover there, his pace will get him out of trouble a lot of the time. So whichever way that Eddie plays him, I'm certain there'll be a success. And just as an observer, I'm really keen to see how he does there. But knowing him and how he's played under Eddie before, and how fond he was of Eddie, Jason, etc., I know that he'll do his very best there, and I'm sure it'll be quality.
Looking at the stats, 97 times centre back, 85 at left back, according to Transfer Market's very, very close.
Yeah.
You mentioned there the relationship with Eddie Howe. Now, some Newcastle United fans, if they want to find something critical about Eddie Howe, they sometimes raise this kind of loyalty that he's got to certain players, and they might look upon the fact that he signed another player that he's worked with, or that he's that he likes, as a bit of a negative. I see it as a positive, because he knows his character. He's not going to bring someone in who's disruptive, and he'll know how to get the best out of him, even though I think they only work for one season together. How key do you think that relationship between Eddie Howe and Lloyd Kelly will be for Lloyd Kelly's success at Newcastle?
I think it'll be great, and it means he'll be able to fit straight in. I don't think it should be a negative thing at all. I mean, if you ask Newcastle fans, are in their eyes, how do they perceive the time at the club of Matt Ritchie? Invariably it will be successful. Callum Wilson, successful. Ryan Fraser, when he was on top of his game, brilliant. However, Lloyd Kelly will just be another one of them. It shouldn't be a negative thing at all. I think you all know by now that Eddie Howe's a very good manager. If he wants to have a chat with a player, he'll put his arm around him, he'll chat to them. They've got that bond already. They don't have to they don't have to establish a new relationship. They know each other so well, and I'm sure they'll have kept in touch as well. So no, I think it can only be a positive thing as well. And it's another Eddie Howe voice. So if there are any faces within the Newcastle changing room or dressing room that are maybe despairing at what Eddie says a little bit, you've got more players there like Callum and Lloyd as well now to say, no, actually look, this does make sense. So yeah, you've got more Eddie Howe voices in there, so it's only gonna work well for both of them, I think.
In his quotes, when he was confirmed as a Newcastle United player, Lloyd Kelly said, "Working with the gaffer previously, I know what he wants from his players, and I know how he wants his players to play. I think with what I can bring, it just makes sense. I just can't wait to get started." Now, we've maybe covered the answer to this question briefly, but what is he talking about there when he says, "With what I can bring, it just makes sense"? What do you think he's talking about there?
I think he's just talking about he's obviously witnessed the style of football that Newcastle have and what he can offer to that. Newcastle are a team that like to play really quick, counter-attacking stuff. I mean, some of the counter-attacks and some of the things I've seen this season have just been scintillating at times. Probably less so this season than last, but look, there have been elements of it, especially towards the latter half of the season for Magpies this season. He would slot into that system absolutely perfectly. He's a good ball player, strong in the air, quick, physicality. He's like a JOELINTON at the back, put it that way. That's my opinion anyway. I think he'll just slot in well with what Howe wants to do. It's not like he's got to learn a new style of football at all. I think primarily the way that Eddie Howe played at Bournemouth is similar, well, not so much identical, but very similar to what it is at Newcastle now. So it just means, it's a modular system, which Lloyd Kelly just fits into perfectly.
And you mentioned his leadership qualities. What is his attitude like? Because I've mentioned there the fact that Eddie Howe doesn't just bring anyone into the group. You know, it's not just about ability; it is about bringing in the right character to fit into the dressing room. There's not many egos, if any at all, in that dressing room, and those that are there are kept, you know, right under check. What is his attitude like, and what will we be getting in terms of his character?
Well, just to maybe put into picture his childhood. At the age of 7, he was separated from his mother Anna, and he spent 11 years along with his older sister and his younger brother in foster care. And I think that's almost built up quite a resilience, really, with him. Within him and his personality. He's very quiet at times, but with that comes a lot of composure as well. You don't see him playing up to the cameras so much. So I think some fans might find it very difficult to warm to him. And that's not meant to be in a negative way, but I think he doesn't show a lot of character, I suppose. When he's on camera, he's just such a professional, and sometimes you do see him let himself go, like when we've got something to celebrate. And with him in the team, we certainly have. Our promotion back to the Premier League, he was the one that captained us to that. However, he brings a coolness, he brings a composure, he's got a steeliness. I think he's a player that just shows all his emotion through playing on the pitch and leading by example. That's all I can say, really. I mean, off the pitch, like I say, he's a very understated character. I think I said on our preview of the news itself that he's a player that clocks in, he grinds out, and then he clocks out. Like that's what he does. And I'm sure Newcastle fans who are keen to have players that wear the shirt with pride and will give 100% will be pleased with that, and I'm sure that'll be evident.
Oh, 100%. And, he said as well in the quote, it's a big move for myself and the family. Of course, being down south is a little bit different. I think the city of Newcastle is amazing with the contrast between city life and the countryside. Now, it is a bit of a cliche sometimes when we talk about players moving to Newcastle, but there have been some very well documented cases of where players just haven't been able to handle the switch in lifestyle, because you can't walk down the street just for a bottle of milk here. You will get, bugged for an autograph or a selfie. So how do you think he's going to handle that? Because playing for Newcastle United, and this isn't meant with any disrespect to Bournemouth, but, it does come with quite a bit of attention, especially if you do just want to pop down the local for a quick pint of milk.
Yeah, and look, I can understand it from Newcastle fans' point of view and what you're saying there as well. For instance, I mean, we're a very sleepy seaside town. We're a tourist town. We're not a big footballing town. Even on Wednesday or Thursday, people aren't talking about the game. We're probably not on Friday. Saturday morning we are, and then we'll obviously go and cheer on our side to 3 points and go home. And apart from us on the podcast, most people will forget about it for a bit. But Newcastle's a city that lives and breathes football, and I think but that's what he wants. I actually think that is what he wants, and he wants to play for a club that can achieve more. So if a player cannot handle that, then I don't know why they're considering a move to Newcastle, where they're absolutely crazy for it. So I'm sure that Lloyd has had that in his considerations. One of the things that is worth mentioning is that during one of the patches with us, there have been a couple of times where his performances have been maybe less convincing. Now, that's not for anything technical. It's just that sometimes he's got this very laid back approach, which, you could phrase it in another way, that say he trusts himself and he trusts his footballing style. Sometimes it can be looked at as being a little bit lazy, maybe. But fans on social media, on AFC Bournemouth, have on Twitter and Facebook, they've sort of clocked onto that, and it's been frustration from us at times because we know how high his ceiling is. So there has been a few issues where I think Lloyd has maybe been a little bit distant from the Bournemouth fans. For instance, we haven't even had a song for him. We've had him for so many seasons. He hasn't even got a song, and I know he'll get that within about a few days at Newcastle. So I think, our relationship with him wasn't as kind of close knit as it could be, but in the end, it just turned into this kind of relationship of like respect. And the more seasons he played, the more he flourished with us as well. Now, Newcastle. I've seen, there have been some games where, you haven't been doing so well, and some of the hashtags have been quite hard to look at. And obviously, as Cherries fans who want Eddie Howe to do well, whenever Newcastle haven't been doing well, we felt almost like sorry for him, because we've known how like vociferous the Geordies can be. However, he knows what he's getting into here. He absolutely does. And he'll be fine, posing for, selfies and stuff. I think he does like his quiet life, from Bristol, like to Bournemouth and now in Newcastle. But yeah, you don't make that move without realising that's one of the byproducts of it.
Yeah, I'm sure he's spoken to Callum Wilson and a couple of others. They would have told him exactly what it's like. Maybe he'll move out to Leafy, Northumberland and stay out of the city centre for that bit of a quiet life. You mentioned the fact that your colleague said in 12 months he thinks he'll be playing for England. Do you think this is a bit of a coup for Newcastle to get him over the line and to get him secured for Newcastle? I know it wasn't too long ago he was being linked to some other clubs in the Premier League, some big names. For Newcastle to get this one done and dusted, is it a big signing for them, do you think?
Yeah, I think it is. He was linked with Spurs, and at that time, a lot of Bournemouth fans actually start to realise, what we've got here. And had he got some years left on his contract, he would have gone for 30 million or so. And we all know Newcastle's situation without, they can't spend like too much money. So I think it's just a really astute signing. Because he doesn't come with a fee, maybe he's not shiny and glamorous like fans want. Obviously, when you've got a star signing where you've parted with a load of money for it, I suppose naturally there's more expectation. But when you're getting a player through the door that you haven't paid a penny for, I suppose there's not really the expectation there. But he will deliver. He certainly will. And I think it could be and should be regarded as a coup. But you'll only know that once you see him play. There are no bells and whistles to his game, but he's just absolutely solid. So yeah, within a few months or so, I think you'll realise what you've got. Just as say Manchester City did with with Nathan Ake, albeit they parted with £40 million for him. I'm sure you'll see the same from Lloyd Kelly.
It's interesting because the big hope was that Lloyd Kelly would sign alongside Tosin Adebayo, who's obviously gone to Chelsea. So now there's a bit of a debate to whether Newcastle United need to go out and sign another centre-back, which of course means spending money on another centre-back. And it's kind of split down the middle. Some do still think, even though Kelly has come on board, that they do need to go out and sign another central defender. What would you say to those Newcastle United fans who, of course, watch their team more than you do, but you've seen Lloyd Kelly play? So can Lloyd Kelly be enough to that question and be the answer where they don't need to go and spend another 30-40 million on a centre-back this summer?
No, I don't necessarily think you do. I mean, this is the other end of the spectrum with Bournemouth. But if you see the team sheet, I mean, I don't know how Newcastle do it, but when we list the teams, we're all trying to work out, Anisette, what are we playing today? Because it's just a list of players, and we're trying to work out, Anisette, is Lloyd left back today or is he left centre back? We don't know. But invariably, it doesn't matter, because he's so good on the ball anyway. So no, like you can absolutely trust him. And whether you need more personnel, I don't know. I just really hope the injury thing, I can be sort of proved right, and that it's not a thing you need to worry about. It's not something he isn't going to be a player that's absolutely plagued. I'm sure he's going to get knocks. Of course he is. He'll be out for a few games, but it's hard to say whether you need to sign someone else. But all I can say about Lloyd is that no matter whether he's left back or centre back, you are in with it. You've got a safe pair of hands there. And if he is centre back, he'll thrive on working with his defensive partner as well. And he's played with some great ones at Bournemouth, including the likes of Gary Cahill and stuff. So there's a lot of talking that goes on between them, and he just slots in really well. So yeah, you'll be in safe hands.
Certainly be interesting if he does take up that centre-back role alongside Fabian Schär. What happens when Sven Botman comes back? Because Sven Botman would be the number one choice at the left-back side of the centre-back pairing. And you don't really see teams play two left-sided centre-backs. So it'd be quite interesting to see what happens there if Lloyd Kelly's made that his own, but you have got your first choice coming back from injury. I want to ask you two other questions aside from Lloyd Kelly, but just on Lloyd Kelly, if we can just finish off with you summing up in a sentence what Newcastle United have got, and just make us a prediction about what he's going to achieve at Newcastle.
Oh, what he's going to achieve? I think this season he'll achieve European football with Newcastle. I do think he will. One thing he will achieve is just fans that will cheer his name. The fans that'll have a song for him like within a few minutes. Like I said, I think he's a player that just wants to be loved, and he maybe didn't get that at Bournemouth. No, we're a very stiff upper lip fan base, I suppose, in many ways. So, but at Newcastle, he'll have the fans clamoring over him, and I think that's what he wants. What he'll achieve, like European football. I think a sustained cup run that could end in silverware. I think that's what Newcastle really should be looking for domestically, at least anyway. And just he'll be part of a successful team at Newcastle. So, I think the sky is the limit for him. At Bournemouth, like I say, that ceiling was only a little bit above where he was now. So I can see why he's made the move. But I'm sure he'll achieve what he wants to at St James's Park.
I was already excited about his arrival, but you've got me even more excited to see him now in black and white come the start of the season. I just want to ask you just briefly, you've mentioned Dominic Solanke earlier in the show. I mean, Eddie Howe went on record to praise him, to say that he was a fan of him, which he very rarely does about opposition players when he's asked about them in a transfer capacity. But he went on the record and did that. Rumours of a £65 million release clause, but that'll only be valid to teams in Europe or teams in the Champions League. Do you think Solanke will leave this summer? And even though that release clause doesn't apply to Newcastle, I mean, what will it cost, do you think, for them to get him on board if indeed they do want to come and try their luck?
I think it would be 65 mil. You're pushing 70, but I think 65 mil would be that, that number. Of course, that is the release clause with him. We need him. We need him really. I think that he's had a taste of us contemplating Europe. I know that sort of feeling all dwindled within like 5 games to go, where he had a couple of losses and it was an impossible thing. But if the owner sort of sticks to his guns, his predictions are within a few seasons we'll be tasting European football. And we were even thinking about it this season in the owner's first full year, and Solanke will be very much aware of that. I think the fact that he's missed out on England, though, it could be a bit of a carrot dangler to teams that maybe do get noticed. I say that, and then Brentford, who finished below us, Ivan Toney straight in, probably more for his penalties more than anything. But hey, perhaps that's what a high-profile betting scandal puts you in the media limelight a little bit more. But yeah, it is concerning for us. I really hope he'll stay. And look, I'm not surprised that Eddie Howe has bigged him up. I think Eddie Howe's very good with his words, and he's always very respectful about Bournemouth. Of course, he loves the club, absolutely dearly, and he'll never have a bad word to say. And whilst he doesn't talk about or praise other players, I think players that he's worked with, he'll always be very complimentary about. And he was he was the manager that signed him from Liverpool for, at the time, it was a big amount for us of 20 million. And we were thinking, my goodness, this lad is not performing at all. He played second fiddle pretty much to Callum Wilson. Callum upped sticks, and then Dom Solanke had to take his role, and it took him a long time to grow into it. And it needed a relegation from us for him to find his goal scoring boots again. But it did that in the Championship really well. And it's translated to the Premier League. So the only way is up for him. I just hope it is with Bournemouth rather than without, because I think our playing style very much revolves around him. The way he holds up, he's integral to it. He's not just a goal poacher. He works so hard. So yeah, really hoping we can keep hold of him. But if you're anyone else, I'm not surprised why you're being tempted to part with your money for him, because I think he's absolutely quality.
One of the questions over Solanke is whether he can do it on a consistent basis, because I think this is the first time in the Premier League that he's got over double figures. You've watched him throughout the last couple of years, a few years. Has he got enough that that last season gone isn't the only time he reaches, 19, 20 goals he scored? Yeah. Can he do it year in, year out?
I think so. I think I don't think this is just a purple patch for him. I sort of think that the 19 Premier League goals that he scored this season. I mean, he's assisted so many as well. He doesn't play as an out-and-out striker. It's almost more as a number 10 at times with our sort of 4-2-3-1 like formation. Quite often he'll come back and he'll grab the ball, he'll distribute to the wingers, he'll get in the box, he'll do absolutely everything. I think that under the right manager, he can be a goal scorer. And one of the things that like Areola has tried to do is look, work hard for the team as you do, but be instinctive, try to get into the box where you can, almost take the responsibility off him as much as possible, where he has to be a playmaker from the front. And he's benefited from that. So under the right manager, I think he absolutely can thrive. And I think last season in the Premier League, his tally was okay, but it could have been better. I think that was probably owing to Gary O'Neill's style of football, which was sometimes handbrake on once we got the lead. Yeah, and also I think he wanted him to do too much. Now, whilst he can do a lot, I think he's his responsibility is now just to score goals, and he's doing well with that. So under the right manager, I think he can be this kind of striker that should look for 20 goals a season. So yeah, I think he's sort of reached like a nice stage now where he can just continue to build, and I wouldn't be surprised if he scored 20 goals next season, whether it is for us or someone else. He certainly will.
And just finally, a word on Eddie Howe. You've mentioned him quite a few times, obviously, in this podcast. What have you made of the job he's done at Newcastle since he took over?
Brilliant. I mean, the first season was absolutely superb. The way he brought on players that just looked pretty average, I thought was absolutely superb. He did it in a his usual almost signature way, which is very understated really, but he's so diligent with what he does, and he continue. Like, my fear was that Newcastle fans, of course, with the takeover, they would be almost too expectant in his first season, but in a way he sort of built a rod for his own back with the way that he had them playing in his first full season in charge. He was absolutely phenomenal with them, and I'm really not surprised. He's the first person in on the training ground. He's the last one out. Absolutely works so hard. He forges these personal relationships with every player. He brings players into this new lease of life. Sometimes he puts players in different positions. Like, what's he doing there? Like, why is he putting JOELINTON there? And then you realize, yeah, okay, he works really well there. So it doesn't surprise me what he's done. It just my fear is that the expectation of Newcastle fans, the more that time goes on, is going to be that they want more and more from him. And whilst I do believe he can give that, he is more of a project-based manager, so sometimes it might take a little bit longer than expected. And I know this season might be a sort of disappointment with no European football. I mean, who could have foreseen that FA Cup final? I don't think anyone expected Manchester United to win that, so I'm sure there'll be some disappointment there. But in a way, I think Newcastle, it'll probably benefit them not to have European football this season, because it means they can put all their focus on the domestic campaigns and hopefully have fewer injuries than they have this season, actually put together a decent run that maybe can secure them Champions League football again. Look, he's done it once. Bournemouth fans were surprised that he did it in his first season at Newcastle, his first proper season in the Premier League. I just think he's brilliant, and he's got a lot of love from Bournemouth fans down here, and especially if Newcastle don't beat us when we play them. I don't know if that's because he's got a tinge of love for the Cherries down here. Not sure, but no, we absolutely love him to bits, and all the best to him. You would say fans there.
Very kind words. Well, Sam, thank you very much for introducing Lloyd Kelly to our Newcastle United audience. You can find Sam on the Back of the Net podcast, the AFC Bournemouth podcast. Thank you for joining us. To you guys watching and listening, hit subscribe, give the video a thumbs up. If you're over on the audio channel, leave us a rating and review, and head over to chroniclelive.co.uk for all the latest Newcastle United news, including our daily transfer live blog. And I'll see you guys very soon.